order the Town of Edisto Beach regular town council meeting of November the 12th, 2020 is now 6 p.m. Present tonight, Mayor Darby, Mayor Pro Tem Moore, Councilman Kaiser, attending by phone, Councilwoman Smyer, and Attorney Duffy. So those would be in person and by phone, so that we establish a quorum. If you would stand and join me in the pledge of allegiance, please.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father, we come before you today approaching the Thanksgiving season. We have so many reasons to be thankful this year. We are thankful for your protection of our citizens, that we have not experienced the loss of anyone during this pandemic. We are thankful for the men and women who have served and are currently serving in our armed forces. They have made it possible for us to live in a free republic and to enjoy our rights and privileges. We are thankful that in this time of political divisiveness that we, as a community, realize that we are all your children and that we are one community. We ask your guidance during our decision-making process, that we will only act for the benefit of our town and its citizens. Please help us to choose the right path to pursue during this pandemic for the health, safety, and welfare of citizens and visitors of Edisto Beach. In your name, amen.
Amen.
Our first order of business is approval of the minutes, and if there's no objection from the council, and I think we can handle these as a block. First one is the regular council meeting minutes of October 8, 2020. The second is special council meeting minutes of October 21st, 2020. And third one is special council meeting minutes of October 22nd, 2020. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve the minutes from each of these. Second.
I have a motion and a second discussion. Hearing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Under old business, second reading of ordinance number 2020-23 to amend section 78-54, excuse me, regarding golf cart decals and increase the fine for parking violations. Is there a motion?
I move we approve the second reading of ordinance number 2020-23 to amend section 78-54.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion.
Yeah, we had one thing on there about the placement of the decal.
I added
It's
it.
been corrected.
I added it today.
Yeah, the word left was, I have to say omitted because we don't want it left out. So anyway, that for the position on the golf cart should be the left front.
Thank
I had another question too.
Yes, ma'am.
When we are looking at this, since this is for a 3-year, multiple year,
That's correct.
if someone sells their property and moves, is there a trigger to cancel that account?
There's not. And really, we probably, out on the street, we wouldn't know it anyway.
Okay.
I mean, there could be, the only way we would know that is to come from utilities, because they're gonna change that water. So they, I mean, if they notify us, say, hey, this property's been sold.
That might be a
We could probably
request you
do
want to make, so that you know.
Okay.
If they don't sell it to somebody else that uses that sticker, even though they're not supposed to. Okay, that was my only comment. I have a motion and a second on the floor. Further discussion?
Yeah, I just want to say that comment that you made, Jane,
Yes.
you know, Wyndham does that. They have to actually turn in their decal.
Okay, that, I'll leave that to, as a procedural thing with Chief Brothers, but I think it might be a good
Okay.
idea.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item B is a Deer Study 2020. Folk Land Management Incorporated completed the 2020 Deer Spotlight Study on September 30th, 2020. The largest concentration of deer were observed in segment 3, potentially due to deer habitat on the southern end of the beach and supplemental feedings of deer by homeowners. The town has several ordinances establishing the protection of wildlife. Section 6.1 designates Edisto Beach as a bird and wildlife sanctuary. Section 6.2 prohibits trapping, hunting, shooting of wild animals, birds. Section 6.4 prohibits the poisoning of animals. Recently, Ocean Ridge, for information, enacted a policy restricting feeding of wildlife in the planned unit development. Any attempt to domesticate wild or stray animals by any method and any feeding of wild or stray animals, specifically including deer, is a violation of their beautification ordinance. I think tonight, since there's no specific action we need to take, that we accept this for information purposes only, and that will give us time to study it.
What about, I'm sorry, what about the thing about the daytime?
Or I'll get, is there a motion?
Take it from information?
Yes.
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Have a motion second on the floor. Under discussion, Crawford and I were talking to Doug, and we wanted to make the suggestion that, and I think Horace Kinsey brought this up from Wendell,
He did.
that when it's a spotlight at night, our deer are not normal deer. They're out in the daytime, the afternoon, nighttime, they're at the state park or asleep somewhere usually. So I would like to see some consideration given to that it not always be the same time at night.
I spoke with Dean Harold yesterday. First of all, he was rather offended at Horace's remarks that there's a scientific study that they do to come up with how they do a spotlight survey. And they've been doing that 30 years. But if you're out here at night a lot, they're out at night too.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. The majority of them we see in the daytime. So I don't
We can
know.
bring that up to him next year when
Maybe
he
one we
does that.
do at spotlight and one we do dusk or before.
Well, they're at dusk. We usually do it right at dusk.
Okay, thank you.
But I can bring that up to him next year when we do the next one.
Just explain it's not normal.
Sure.
I have a motion second for any further discussion. Hearing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? We have tonight, we're privileged to have the Ark Street Billow Drainage Project. Ryan Phillips with Davis and Floyd and Michael, what's your last name, Mike? Horton. And Catherine Hendricks. And I believe you may be a resident.
Yes,
Are you,
I'm Tommy Coggins. Jenkins and Caldwell, I know they've been a frequent correspondence about this. I'm a co-owner with them.
okay, all right. Then, Ryan, do you present or which one?
Yes,
do you
ma'am,
present?
I'll present.
All right, if you would come to the front, please. And then, Mr. Coggins, we will entertain a few moments for questions. If you can keep it brief.
Yeah, it'll be great.
Anybody get offended if I take this off?
I'll put my back on. I just can't talk to the microphone with it on.
You might not understand me with that.
Yeah, all right.
So just a little project update. We again appreciate the opportunity to try to help Edisto Beach address some of the flooding. I know everybody's getting tired of it. It seems like every year there's more and more hurricanes. So hope we can do that with this project, and just wanted to give everybody an update again. So thank you for having us here. Just a little background again for some of the folks maybe joining us virtually. Edisto Beach here. Really, the focus of this project is to try to address some of the flooding along Ark and Billow Street. And so really going into this, we were really a little naive, and so we thought it would be a simple solution, but it's a little bigger than just Ark and Billow. So just want to recap again. The focus was Ark Billow, but we'll kind of touch on some of the other things. Project overview, we kicked this project off early summer, really had our kickoff meeting and deployed some rain gauges and things like that towards the end of June. And so really just want to cover some of the major components of the project. First and foremost is data collection. You know, we wanted to put out some rain gauges and things to really understand what's happening. Been pretty lucky to be able to get some fairly large events. And then with that data, we can actually do a drainage study and evaluate performance, and then ultimately come up with some type of solution, design that solution, and then hopefully move forward with actually building it. So touching on some of the data collection, I actually work with Iris. We know that another topic aside from Ark Billow is the lagoon system at Ocean Ridge. So we wanted to go ahead and most of Ark Billow drains through that lagoon system. So we wanted to go ahead and put out some sensors and be able to understand what's going on there. And then again, a rain gauge to really get site-specific details on the beach here. And so with that, we were able to follow up. That's actually Madison Socha there, one of our staff engineers, parents of retired Army Corps folks, done a lot of work out here on the beach, but he's been helping me in the field. We actually went out and did a conditions assessment of all the piping and drainage paths. We've already done that. Once we get into the finalizing design, we'll go get a little more detail, but we want to do that up front. And then through the help of DOT, Patrick and other folks in the town, we've been able to save a little bit of money by compiling some of the data on file. So this was our study area for Ark Billow. I mean, you really think Ark Billow just being an isolated drainage system, but if you look at the topography, it's actually very interesting. I mean, there's a potential 130 acres that can drain into and through that network and ultimately out to Big Bay Creek. So this is our focus study area. We're not going to get into super detail of everything, but just wanted to again show you the level and the scale of this watershed. During the conditions assessment, some of the big things that we saw, and I've talked with Mark and Iris and Patrick, is actually along Myrtle Street at the intersection of Billow. There's a not completely clogged, but a pretty significantly clogged culvert there. And so really all of the water upstream of that along Ark Street has to ultimately get through there to actually drain. And so this is the upstream side of Myrtle Street. Yeah, Myrtle Street is down here. So you can see, it holds the water. So that's one major thing we saw. DOT's been contacted. They're supposed to be cleaning that for you. And that will be an immediate, at least unplug the issue. It's not going to solve everything, but that's a quick fix that we noticed. During the field inventory, to actually really understand the watershed, we went ahead and we surveyed everything, all the drainage infrastructure that contributes to Ark, Billow Street, and then ultimately out to the lagoon. And then we did have to go understand some of the drainage on the western side just to make sure we weren't co-mingling water and really understanding everything that was going on. So a lot of ditching, a lot of piping, and then I'm sure everyone's aware of the DOT system that they put in here that ultimately feeds into the upstream side of Ark. But that's also a big major system in here as well. So when we started collecting the data, we got very lucky. I know it might not be lucky for y'all as the residents. July the 7th, I think everybody probably remembers that storm. Pretty heavy storm, 5 to 6 inches of rainfall. And then really the big thing is to notice the lagoon downstream of the system takes multiple days to drain. So ultimately there's some hydrologic restrictions, so to speak, that ultimately limit performance. So this is just a snapshot of some of that data, but it's been very helpful for us to be able to actually validate some of the modeling and design that we're doing. So once we have that data and then we understand the system, everything that's out there and what drains to it, we want to develop a computer model. And so we want to actually simulate the rainfall runoff in the watershed that contributes to Arkansas and try to really understand those dynamics. And then in doing so, we were able to model all the pipes, channels, and whenever those pipes and channels fill up, we actually used a 1D two-dimensional model. So when it fills up, it spills out over land. So we can much more accurately predict what's going on and actually take into account all the different flows on the coast. And the coast is really complicated because it's flat. I mean, water can travel multiple different ways. So, and then really the big thing is being able to take into account the lagoon. And without those sensors on the lagoon, we're shooting in the dark. And so that really gives us a little more confidence in some of our modeling. And so the ultimate goal of doing the modeling is to, again, simulate the rainfall and runoff, and then ultimately figure out and identify any issues in the system and what we can do to mitigate some of the flooding. So again, 130 acre study area. So pretty big, more than most people really understand. And we were able to break this up into about 46 smaller watersheds. And here's just some general statistics on some of those watersheds. But one of the surprising things is the slope, and it's really a lot of these beachfront properties that slope back towards Arkansas. And you wouldn't think about that just driving down the street, but if you look at some of the data, it's pretty interesting. And then again, curve number, that's a mechanism for us to determine the amount of runoff. So thinking the curve number as an index that would determine how much water can run off. So 100% would mean all water that rains ends up in Ark Street, so to speak. And the lower that number is, the less water runs off. So that's a pretty important parameter, but we can talk physics and everything like that later. So here's what everybody's interested for the most part. You know, what does the flooding look like? We really understand some of the flooding. So this is this July 7th event, again, close to 5 or 6 inches. And then over here on the left is just a graphic showing all of the flooding above half a foot. So there's probably some more flooding that would have taken place, but really we want to focus on, 6 inches and above. That's really, where nuisance flooding and above happens. You can expect a curb is about 6 inches. So a curb line, on a typical big storm, it would probably fill up. So we want to, again, focus on above half a foot. So working with Iris to try to gauge, does this make sense? Is it realistic? And she was able to send me some footage. This is actually from one of the residents. Forgive me, but I'm not remembering who exactly sent this, but this is looking back towards 174. So makes sense to me. I think we're pretty good without spending a whole lot of money and exhausting the town's money. I think we're pretty good with the modeling. We really understand what's going on. And so now we want to try to fix that. A little bit of footage, but it's hard to see. So there's two main components to the flooding. So there's structural components, which are things like the piping, the physical condition of the piping. There's some other things that are more natural hydrologic conditions that contribute to flooding. And so this is just a general graphic that shows you the size of the piping. Green here is those are ditches. Purple is, I think, I can't even read that.
1.5.
Yep, 1.5. And so the key thing to notice here is that right before Lee Street, there's a 1.5 foot pipe or an 18-inch pipe that goes to a 15-inch pipe. Actually, there was too much water and a clogged pipeline to see there. Then it goes from a 2 foot pipe or 24-inch up to a 2.5 foot. So essentially you're going from large pipes to small pipes to large pipes. So think about, it's almost like a highway. You go from 4 lanes to 2 lanes, back to 4 lanes. You're going to get some constriction and you're going to get some backup. And that definitely contributes to the flooding in Arkansas. Now, again, the other issue is, like I mentioned earlier, that clogged culvert at the intersection of Myrtle and Billow. That is really, again, one of the major things. But again, these are some of the structural problems. Obviously, we can upsize some of these ditches and maybe add a little bit of storage, but as far as the big picture items that we were able to realize, that just summarizes those. Some of the more natural, the fact of being on Edisto Beach, and this is, the beach and the land that God made, and that's what we have to deal with. We can obviously change that, but it's not natural. And so the lagoon system, this blue line here is the lagoon system. The key to notice here, this dashed orange line, is the top of the ditches along Arkansas. So during that July 7th event, physically the water can't drain because the lagoon is not going to allow it to drain. So that's a big issue. The hurricane events and things like that, really large storms, it's going to be hard to mitigate that without doing incremental improvements to the lagoon system. But what we can do is focus on some of the typical conditions, at these lower water surface elevations in the lagoon. So this red line up here is actually the elevation at the intersection of Lark and Billow. So you can see that lagoon was very, very close to being the same level as that intersection. So other things, Ark Billow is actually a really low-lying area. I mean, it's almost a bowl. So a lot of the water is going to go there and it's going to fill up. And then other things, high water table. So infiltration might be limited in some places on the beach. Everyone thinks you have sandy soils, you're going to get a lot of infiltration, but if the water table's up, you may get a lot of infiltration at first, but after an hour, all of that fills up. So these are just, again, more natural hydrologic parameters that influence the system and how it performs. So general recommendations, we're actually working on these now. The clogged culvert at Myrtle Street, DOT is working on fixing that. They've been having some issues with some of their machinery. And then talking with Patrick, Mark, and Iris, I know the town has purchased a trailer back unit. And so talking to Patrick, sounds like the town's going to be doing a little more maintenance. So that definitely would help. I know a lot of these roads are DOT roads. DOT doesn't always like to come out as soon as possible, and they have a lot of roads. So I think that's really great that the town is taking on some of that responsibility. As far as construction goes, so what can we actually build and install to fix some of the flooding? Tried to make this as simple as possible, and I told Iris, I promised her I would not put any plans up here. So the wider red lines are pipeline upsizes. So these are pipeline improvements. And so we don't know the condition of the Myrtle Street culvert. It could be in good condition, but as of now, I'm not really counting on it. So we're designing around replacing that culvert and upsizing it, replacing and upsizing pipelines that cross Lee Street and tie into the lagoon. A few minor, say, grading improvements, but just redressing the channels and just, I know a lot of the banks have been sloughing off and things like that. It's really wet. And then depending on what DOT may let us do in the right of way, we may be able to do like some landscape improvements and things like that, some type of bio retention, bio swell. Just that'd be more aesthetic, but it would help soak up some of that moisture. And then these thicker, solid yellow lines are pipeline inspections and cleaning. And so if the contractors come out, we can actually have them video those lines, inspect them, clean them, and then depending on what we find there, we may need to do some type of cast in place or cured in place pipe, basically mediate some of the structural damage. I know talking to Horace, they cleaned a lot of the piping in Ocean Ridge. So according to him, everything is clean. I don't know the condition, but so we would be wanting to do something similar to that. So what does that solution do? Well, for a hurricane event, it's probably not going to do as much. It will help it drain faster, but on your average, more typical storm events, you would have this without doing anything, and then with the improvements, we could potentially see this level of benefit. So again, hurricane events, I'm not going to be the knight in shining armor and tell you everything's going to be okay, but I think most of the time we can really make a pretty big impact on the flooding. There's actually this area here just happens to be a really low spot. There's a pipe actually that crosses that, and there may be some things we can do along it here, and I'll touch on those later. But that solution I previously showed, this is what I would call the minimum recommendation. Let's go ahead and do something, show a benefit, and try to do that as economically as possible.
Okay, questions from council?
Yeah, Ron, I got, where you guys consider wanting to cover the pipes go from large, small, back to large.
That's right.
Is that something you're talking about replacing that small? Is that part of the?
Replacing the entire pipeline. So I know that the town replaced a lot of this piping. And so that slide I was just on, there's actually a lot of utilities in here. And my intuition tells me that smaller piping was put in to avoid the utility lines. Because when you start getting with the utility lines, it's really expensive. So we essentially want to upsize all of that piping and make it one uniform size all the way to the lagoon. So Lee Street to the lagoon will be all 30-inch.
If you do that, we work the rain too, right?
Yes, ma'am. So we would, upsizing the pipe, making sure it drains. We would fix all of that.
And then one other question, what about lagoons themselves? What about the outflow into Bay Creek? Are there restrictions there that need to be considered? Is that something that talking about?
So that's, I'm actually going to touch on that later too. I know Iris wants to study that. And so we may be able to try to get some FEMA money, but that system definitely could be improved. The outfall, the final outfall over by Big Bay Creek, I don't think is a major problem. It's just going from lagoon to lagoon. I mean, it's just, once I drove in there, it's pretty easy to see.
Well, there's a crab gate over there too that sometimes doesn't.
And Horace did tell me they do open that because the smells in the lagoon, so they do let it backflow. And if there is a high tide, a king tide or something, we said it'll close it. But I can definitely back that water up and definitely contribute.
That's all.
Councilman Cowser,
I'm good.
Councilwoman Snyder,
No, without seeing the graph, I've got all the notes I can handle right now.
all right, what? Mr.
Coggins?
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Hearing goes along with the math.
All right, mine too. So if I may.
Yep.
So I understand perfectly all the macro part. And big flood events, however y'all, that's a huge thing to deal with. Our immediate concerns are here, here, the deep open ditches. So can this be addressed early? When? Or is it always going to be an open ditch? If it is, then we're going to have to try to do a little bit of work ourselves. And so given the whole project, is there a plan to pipe those ditches? And if there's a plan to pipe them, when can we expect it?
That is in the works. So working with Iris, one thing that we really need to address is where the water table is. And we could put in some type of piping and help promote infiltration, but I'm not really betting on it. The hesitation that I have as an engineer with piping is we would want to put a big enough pipe to be able to hold the same volume that the ditches can hold. And that could get
Like a
expensive.
4-foot pipe or something?
Yeah, so we would have to get the pipe in to hold that volume and then actually physically be able to drain. So by piping, we might end up just covering up the problem, so to speak. It may not necessarily help the flooding, but that's one thing we're still working with Iris right now on. And DOT has some opinions, trying to get them to the table on that too. As far as the physical flood problem, this recommendation is going to address that now aesthetically and just from a homeowner standpoint. We probably need to circle up when
So-
Iris returns.
So Ryan, what your recommendation along Billow that will improve Arc Street flood drainage, correct?
Yes.
Just, it's not gonna address the aesthetics of it.
So when Mike and Sam want the answers here, the answer to whether those ditches will be enclosed and piped is still an open question.
Still an open question.
Okay. And so any deadline or any kind of expectation of when or if it'll be done is out.
So I can't give you a date or anything. And we've had discussions on potentially partnering with the homeowners as well. That came up last week. So I think really the big focus has been to fix what's causing the flooding and then address, aesthetic issues.
Yeah. And to be clear, it's a little more than aesthetic. I mean, we've had, boats go, people backing their boats in and once you get used to it, it's an inconvenience, but other times it's more than an inconvenience of having to get somebody pulled out. A 10-year-old dog went in there one time, couldn't get out. I mean, then I've got to get him out. Fortunately, he was big enough so the water's not over his head. But, it's a little more than aesthetic.
And this culvert right here at Myrtle ideally would help.
So
Again,
that water will flood.
yes, it will flow. If we can unplug, pull the plug from the
Then we just
bathtub.
have dry ditches instead of wet ditches.
So, I mean, if you, not right now because it just
Right.
rained, but if you go down here by the Wyndham, that ditch, it dries out,
Right.
so to speak. But up here, it just physically has nowhere to go.
And all that makes perfect sense.
But no, as far as a date, a specific, what to expect, we're still working.
And covering those ditches is not a priority.
It's not part of the first
Right,
initial
first
minimal
step.
solution phase.
And I get there's a much bigger issue here, so.
Well, and I think too, you're still working with Iris to come up with a solution,
Yes,
particularly to Arc Street.
right.
So that's where I suggest we leave it tonight and let y'all continue to your
To work with her.
Iris and Mark.
Okay,
And I'm gonna touch on a couple
okay,
future things for Arc Street specifically.
right.
Any other questions?
Are we about to finish?
Yes, ma'am. Almost there. So
Ms. Meyer, did you have a question?
Oh, I'm sorry, no.
So one of the big, I'd say a larger cost of the project is going to be utilities. I mentioned those before. This is Lee Street here. I know the town just put in a well, a 12-inch water line. There's a 4-inch force main from a pump station, and then there's a 10-inch line there. So, I mean, this is really, why that smaller piping was put in, just to avoid that, because it gets pretty costly. How much does it cost? So, including all the utility locations, permitting, construction inspections from our team, making sure it actually is built properly, installed correctly. At this stage, we have a 25% contingency, just for, we're at 30 to 50% design, so we're still working through details. But we're at around 265,000. And actually, I've been able to work with the district engineer with Colleton County and some local utility companies to really firm down some of our cost estimates. And so, talking with Mark and Iris last week, we feel comfortable with the numbers. Again, we want to be a little high. We definitely don't want to be too low and then have a contractor come in and then interrupt the whole show, so to speak. So happy to go into this more detail. Probably don't care to get into it, but I'm happy to discuss any of that if y'all want to this time or later.
I think it will do later.
Okay.
Really, Ryan, we as council, like figures in front of us, so we can sit down and just look at every component, okay? At our ages, we're not real audible learners, okay? Just so you know. So, yeah, that's gonna be important for us. I think tonight we just get information.
Yes, ma'am.
We can get a copy of the PowerPoint.
I'm gonna email a copy, and then I can give you bigger graphics and help assessments so you can actually read it. Won't make you work too hard and strain. I can barely even read it myself. So
Thank you.
next steps, like I mentioned, we're about 30 to 50% design. We've got plans and everything. That's how we come up with our cost estimates. Really, next step will be to work with the town, council, residents, and finalize that design, get all the bid documents ready, and work with the town to actually get bids and select a contractor, get it permitted, and then build it. So we're moving along now, and I think with a cost estimate, we can really work together and figure out what we want to do within budget. And obviously, we can pull things back, we can phase things, but we can help work with you to build what makes sense according to budget and both from an engineering perspective. Some other things I was mentioning with Arc Street, since it is a town road, if we could put in some storage or infiltration and it would actually work, we could explore some type of infiltration technology. So whether it's a chamber or I know DOTs are putting a lot of perforated pipe, but before we get too far in the weeds on that, I would really not want to explore that too much without some type of infiltration testing. And I'm going to work with Iris and Mark to figure out if that's something we really want to pursue. But without that information, as an engineer, I don't really feel comfortable exploring some of those solutions. And then again, we've mentioned the lagoon, so that's really a limiting factor as well. And there may be some opportunities with some of the new FEMA programs. There's a new BRIC program, building resilient infrastructures, and I really think town of Edisto Beach would be perfect for those grants. And we actually have pretty good relationships with the Emergency Management Division at the state, so we can certainly work with you to explore some of those opportunities. And there's others too through EPA and DHEC. So I know water quality has been a question with Big Bay Creek and lagoons. So with EPA and DHEC, we can get money to improve stormwater if we can improve water quality. So there's a couple of avenues there that we can explore with you. And with that, I'll quit putting everybody to sleep.
Thank you, Ray.
Thank you.
It's a lot of information to absorb at one time, so we'll look forward to the report.
Okay?
So would, council like to just accept this tonight for informational purposes until we can give the information?
Yes.
You've got another question?
Who had a question?
No, I don't.
You don't, Ms. Frank?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh.
That'll mess with the meeting.
Oh,
Thank y'all.
Thank you, sir.
Be careful. Doesn't like to go out.
That's right. I'll stumble out of here.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is a 2021 meetings and holiday schedule. Is there a motion?
Move to accept, the holiday meeting schedule.
a second.
Okay, my only thing is, and I'll bring this up, and it's gonna make it sound like a Grinch
You gotta
snow
make a
Christmas.
motion in a second.
We have to say, yes, I do. Make it sound like the Grinch stole Christmas, but when I look at it, the holiday falls on a Saturday. There is a day off on Friday we normally get, the day prior to Christmas. And then Christmas comes on Saturday, and then you have Sunday. Well, on the schedule, it is scheduled for Monday, Christmas observed, and Tuesday, the day after Christmas observed. My consideration is this, and possibly something you might want to consider. When we look at it, we have a lot of our homeowners that are down here to try to get things done during that time period. If Monday and Tuesday are off, there's probably going to be people that ask for Friday off and take that day off because it's New Year's Eve. I would rather shortcut that and just have Monday off after Christmas and make Friday the day for observing the day after Christmas. And then we get 3 solid days, for them to work. So that's a possible solution. That would be solution in my mind anyway.
So you're talking about Christmas Eve, Friday off. Saturday's Christmas. Sunday's the day after. And then moving, Christmas Day,
Now, observing Christmas Day, they still get money,
yeah.
but we move,
Observing Christmas, that's their day off for Christmas Day.
right, and then we would move the other one to that Friday,
Okay,
That makes sense.
and we have 3 solid days, and just 2 long weekends.
okay.
That makes sense, yes.
All right, well then,
So just for clarification, so we would be getting 2 days of Christmas instead of the 3.
right into that 3rd day would be moved to New Year's Eve, that Friday, okay? That would give them observance for the day after Christmas, all right? And then at least that gives you 3 contiguous days of solid
Too
work.
long weekend.
Yeah, with 2 long weekends.
Mhm.
The other thing too, I want you to consider is the November council meeting has been moved to a Wednesday night instead of Thursday, next year. This is next year due to Veterans Day. So then, if we're able to have workshops then, the workshop would be moved to Monday. So you would have the interval to get any questions or anything answered. I do have a motion and a second on the floor. Would anybody like to make an amendment before we move on that one?
Yeah, we'll move to amend the schedule as discussed.
Is there a second to the amendment?
Second.
I have a motion and amendment on the floor. All those in agreement with the amendment, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Now let's go back to the other motion. I have a motion second on the original motion. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call.
Yes. Wait,
Okay, I'm
let's
sorry.
make sure we realize we're voting
You're
on.
on time
Okay,
delay.
so with the original motion, it was to accept it as it was.
Right.
Okay.
And then we had an amendment to make the change discussed. So now we're gonna go
So,
back,
it's-
accept the motion with the amendment.
okay, there you go.
All right, thank you. All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The council goal-setting retreat is set for January 28, 2021 in council chambers beginning at 10 a.m. Is there a motion?
I move we approve the 2021 council goal setting retreat for January 28th, 2021.
Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion.
Yes, the 28th is actually a Thursday instead of a Tuesday. And so did you want to have it on Tuesday or Thursday?
Can you check that right quick, Ms. Marcus?
Tuesday's the 26th, Thursday's the 28th.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Farrer. You
Sure.
want to have it the 26th? Instead of the 28th, Ms. Meyer?
Oh, sure, whatever's fine with me. I just wanted to get the date and the date, together.
All right, let's do it
So what-
Tuesday, January 26th.
Okay.
At 10 a.m.
All right.
I have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? On the camera project, amount is $16,120. Request council consideration and approval to use $16,120 from accumulated depreciation under the existing camera system to replace and add cameras at Town Hall, Bay Creek Park, intersection of 174 and Jungle Road in the convenience station. This would leave a remaining balance of $12,880 for any other repairs or replacements. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the camera project.
Is there a second? Have a motion, a second on the floor. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item E, award of RFP 2020-06, convenience station attendant services in the amount of $30,000. The town has been in negotiation with the Public Services regarding the convenience station attendant services that were built into their contract. Administration feels the town can provide better service by contracting these services independent of the public. The public has agreed to reduce their contract amount if the town decides to handle these services. Request council consideration approval to award RFP 2020-06, convenience station attendant services to Lions Contract Service LLC at a cost not to exceed $30,000 and authorize the town administrator to negotiate said contract. Is there a motion?
I move we approve the award RFP 2020-06 convenience station attendant services to Lions Contract Service LLC at the cost not to exceed $30,000 and authorize the town administrator to negotiate said contract.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Under committee vacancies, under the Water and Sewer Committee, there remains still one vacancy. On item B, the Municipal Elections Commission, we have an application from Ann Luckadoo. And I would suggest that someone make the motion and let's approve it quickly because she worked this last election and did a phenomenal job. No problems whatsoever. So if somebody'd like to make that motion quickly,
Yes, I move that we approve Ann Luckadoo to the Municipal Elections Commission.
Second.
I have a motion second on the floor discussion. Hearing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? And you'll notify her this office.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Under Beachfront Management Committee, there's one vacancy. Dr. Patrick Sheehan has resigned from the Beachfront Management Committee. We need a motion to advertise for this vacancy.
Move with advertised the for management.
Second.
Have a motion second on the floor discussion. Hearing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Under the Accommodations Tax Advisory Board, Edisto Beach Spot Nourishment Project 2020, Hurricane Dorian. The Accommodations Tax Advisory Board approved the amended proposal for $320,000. Request Council approved $320,000 from tax funds for the Edisto Beach Spot Nourishment Project to repair Hurricane Dorian damages. Is there a motion?
I move we approve the Edisto Beach Spot Nourishment Project 2020.
Second.
Have a motion second on the floor discussion. Hearing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? I'm going to be very popular tonight. Departmental updates are being submitted in writing. Under public comment period. Were there any sent in?
No, ma'am.
It's already being advertised, so we wait on somebody to apply. All right, and then under, public comment, since there are none, I would like to make one announcement though, because we're very proud of this. Our employee Patrick Zeal is the proud father of a son born on 11/11. His name is Barnwell Brett Zim. Congratulations, Patrick, and know that we all love babies on this council. And I'm really gonna be popular this time because there's no updates on any of the litigation, so that section of the meeting has been canceled.
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
A second.
Motion second on floor discussion. Hearing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.